Today is the 25th Sunday of the year. Our Gospel text is Luke chapter 16, verses 1 through 13. As with so many of the teachings of Jesus on his way to Jerusalem, this one has an edge to it. In fact, it jars. Jesus seems to be approving dishonesty. A closer look reveals something different. First of all, see it as a story permeated by irony. Irony is when we say something at one level, but at a much deeper level, the opposite is the truth. And then when you situate it in the context in which Luke has it in the Gospel, it follows immediately the story of the prodigal son. Put these together, looking at it through the lens of irony, seeing it in the context of actually contrasting worlds in which two people inhabit. Now, note on the use of that word, world. It refers to the way we are being, with the values, the expectations, the dispositions, the thought patterns that construct our way of responding and engaging the world. Two people in the one family can live in different worlds. Husband and wife can live in different worlds. What a joy it is when they inhabit the same world. Sooner or later, living in different worlds can become mutually exclusive. That is tragic. It's an important meditation that the Gospel today offers us. The prodigal son story in the previous chapter, chapter 15, has a young man doing something scandalous. The story of the dishonest steward has a young man doing something scandalous. How do they respond? And how does their response indicate the worlds in which they inhabit? Now we need to notice that Luke uses exactly the same verb of each of them, diaskopizo, which means to waste or to squander. They're both guilty of similar crimes, as it were. The prodigal son, however, says, I will return to my father. He seeks mercy and he receives it. The unjust steward, the dishonest steward, sees that he's been caught, and the impact of what he's done just prompts him to a new strategy. In fact, a strategy that extends the dishonesty for which he's been caught out. And Jesus, continuing the ironic story, the cynicism of this world means he gets patted on the back. He's a clever bloke, because this is how he dealt with the problem. He's a problem solver, and he knows how to solve problems in this world of problems. There's a couple of other contrasting figures in the Bible that complement these stories of different worlds in which people can inhabit. The first is Saul versus David. Saul is a very ambivalent and insecure leader. He's constantly shooting himself in the foot. Saul is a problem solver, but is not happy that he's able to solve the problems. He lives in the culture and in the history of Israel. This is the world of the covenant. It's not actually the world that Saul is able to inhabit. He doesn't inhabit a world shaped by, informed with the reality of God's love having chosen these people. Saul is pretty much on his own, and he's miserable. David, he did a terrible thing, but he inhabits a world of mercy, a world of faith, the covenant world. He actually believes in God and God's mercy and God's goodness, and it shapes his life, enables him to deal with the most horrendous crime that he has committed. This is a contrast between trust and mistrust. Saul represents mistrust, doesn't trust God, doesn't trust anybody actually, let alone himself. David trusts God. That can be scandalous because God's love is everlasting. God's love is ever forgiving. The other contrasting pair that complement our reflection is Peter versus Judas. Like Saul, Judas doesn't trust this world of God. You're on your own. Judas too is a problem solver, and he's pretty good at it by all accounts. Except he comes up against a problem that he can't solve. His clever strategy actually turns out to be betrayal. All 4 Gospels record this. Something went on there. Only Matthew says he took his own life, so we don't have to accept that as his final destination. But clearly, Judas shot himself in the foot, so to speak. This is pragmatism versus faith. Peter, he committed a terrible crime too. He betrayed Jesus. But there seems to have been some deep down intuition in Peter that the world that Jesus inhabited was the world that he wanted to inhabit. He remained open to mercy and forgiveness. The question then arises for you and me out of today's gospel. Which world do I inhabit? Now, the question shouldn't drive us to a willful mastery effort to change worlds if we think that is necessary. The first step is awareness. What matters most to you? What preoccupies you? What shapes your life? That will tell you a lot about the world you inhabit.